So without fungi creating the fine grain of the soil, plants wouldn't even exist. So there is a very deep history between these two kingdoms of life, and that is why studying the plant microbe interactions matters so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Victor Justi, and welcome to another episode of the Wisenetix Podcast, where we explore leadership, innovation, and communication in agribusiness with the voices that are shaping the future of our industry. Today, we are doing something special. It's a roundtable conversation with two brilliant minds from Florence Quantum Labs, a company merging biotechnology, fungi, and quantum science to revolutionize agriculture and life science. With us, we have Abhiram Sripat, a scientist leading their research in quantum biology, and Jordan Long, the company's chief commercial officer and the business strategists behind their go-to-market vision. So, Jordan, Abhiram, welcome to the Wisenetix Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
That's great to having you guys here. So, to start things off, tell us briefly, Abhiram, what is Florence Quantum Labs and what makes this project so unique?
Florence Quantum Labs is our ambitious project to realize Einstein's unfinished project. He mentions in the last one of his famous 4 papers published in 1905, the Brownian motion. It is a landmark paper that can be called the foundation of quantum biology. So our team aims to unite the two fields of quantum physics and biology and trying to search how the chaotic subatomic physics works incredibly well together with an unimaginably structured way in biology.
Wisenetix turns podcast airtime into brand authority. We don't sell ads, we elevate voices. Curious how far your voice can go to become a reference in the industry and attract more leads? Scan the QR code and discover how we can turn your expertise into unmatched brand authority. Let's transform expertise into influence, starting now.
So let's go deep into that. Abhiram, you have mentioned before that fungi have survived for over 500 million years, outlasting almost everything on Earth. So for our listeners in agribusiness, how does that resilience translate into practical innovation today?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first fungi-like life form emerged about 900 million years ago. And it was only around 500 million years ago that they established themselves as a proper kingdom of life. Plants would take another 40 million years, to put things in perspective, to come to the life on Earth. The fungi created the very soil upon which plants would survive by chemically breaking down the minerals from the rocks. So without fungi creating the fine grain of the soil, plants wouldn't even exist. So there is a very deep history between these two kingdoms of life, and that is why studying the plant microbe interactions matters so much. And we at Florence Quantum Labs are actively working towards figuring out how this phenomena takes place. Essentially, what is the grammar of their language and what are the rules of their sort of ancient symbiotic relationship.
That's incredible. I personally didn't know that before you shared that with me. And you have also talked that how many soil inoculants in the market simply don't work. And what's the main problem with how we approach soil biology, and how does your technology can change that?
Absolutely. So a meta-analysis was done in 2024 by Professor Liz Koziol at University of Kansas, and she concluded that 88% of the soil inoculants being sold in the market do not work at all. And even if you make better products, the situation is not going to get any better. So here's the thing. There are about 321 described species of arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi out there. The fungi that is in these soil inoculants. But most products only utilize a handful of them, maybe 4 or 5 out of 321, okay? And furthermore, the problem is that I think this is the core of the problem. The official soil of California is San Joaquin, and it has a very different story of how it came to be than soil in, let's say, Illinois, which is drummer. It is then, I think, it's, if I can recall correctly, that's the name of the soil in Illinois. So we need to know a combination of the right soil with the right microbes for the right crop to make agriculture better. Part of our research is currently based on finding just that, so that we can provide best soil intelligence to the farmers. Using the same 4 strains to inoculate your soil in 2 very different soils, which have millions of years of their own history, is a very non-scientific solution, in my opinion. And that's where we are trying to revolutionize the agriculture.
So what you mean is it's not kind of a standard way to treating the soil. So each part of the world has its specific conditions, and the solutions need to be tailored for adapting to that specific region and soil.
Yes, there's they have their own. Each soil has its own native microbes, and we cannot use the same thing to apply, to two soils which have a very different history.
It makes sense. It makes sense. And Jordan, that's incredible, fascinating, but it's also quite complex. So can you help us connecting the dots? I mean, what's the main solution that Florence Quantum Labs is actually bringing to the market?
Yeah, so our solution is a platform, right? So we have the bioreactor overall, and that consists of mycoponics, which is Dr. Porterfield's pioneering research that comes out of space agriculture, combined with quantum mechanics, which would be our microfluidic chip. So overall, what we're able to do across industries is basically either speed up discovery, we're able to unlock new use cases, allow agriculture to grow in different places. Within defense, that means that understanding soil at a very deep level, which allows for GIS use cases to be unlocked. But we're basically making biology and computation partners in real time in a platform that's very easy to use. So the science isn't ever going to be easy to use, but the outputs that come to farmers, that come to pharmaceutical companies, that allow them to understand what new drugs are possible, what new soil inoculants may be possible, what you should be doing to encourage soil growth in particular areas within agriculture. You can really think of it as land meets the sea. We're able to get intelligence from both, really make sure that you're able to have the best information to continue to either grow the crops that you need to. And of course, we have a huge bioremediation use case. So areas where the land may have been degraded from large-scale agriculture, which is a huge problem in the United States, we're able to actually use our technology to get the intelligence you need to improve that soil condition while also, not being able to grow anything on it during that time.
Wow, that's fantastic. Oh, and okay, I'm not that technical, so help me understanding, and I think it could be good for everyone that is listening to us. Your bioreactor, you call it life in the loop. It's the foundation of these applications.
So I started using the phrase life in the loop, but I may encourage Abhiram to just jump in here for a second once I answer this. But life in the loop was essentially a way for me to describe it that was really akin to, when we're talking about AI, we always hear people say human in the loop. Where does the human come in the loop? Where do these systems actually work? Where does the AI sometimes fail without a person who has the real experience to do this job actually come in? In our case, it's very similar to that. So we get asked the question a lot, why aren't you just doing this computationally? Why are you not just doing this within synthetic biology only? And so the answer to that is really you can't within some of these things. You need to have that biological knowledge in a continuous living production system in order to maintain access to that ancient data that we're trying to get. So life in the loop essentially means that we're stopping treating biology like an input and we're starting treating it like a collaborator. So traditional reactors force living systems into a static container. Mycoponics does the exact opposite. We're in a continuous living state so that it can adapt, evolve, respond inside of our tower, which allows us to get that and get the data that we need in real time so that our quantum process that lays on top of it is actually getting the correct insights. So when people try this in genetic modeling, for example, in human genome, when you try to remove any sort of actual biological material from the process, yes, sometimes computation gets it correct, but not all the time. And oftentimes when it's wrong in a really, really big way. And so some of our partners, even within the pharmaceutical space, have tried this synthetic application. And so if they were getting it right, they wouldn't be open to partnerships with Florence and other people that are really focused on the biology. And historically, we've moved towards synthetic and computational systems because they're cheaper, right? There's no way, if you're dealing with a living organism without something like mycoponics, you're having to grow these things over and over and over again. The process is stop, start, stop, start. With mycoponics, it's continuously there, giving that feedback loop. I would say that it's just that incorporation of keeping the adaptation and the knowledge of biological systems as part of our actual workflow and production process.
Awesome. And Jordan, help me understanding something, because your background is like in defense, gaming, and immersive tech, very different worlds. So how did that path lead you to join the Florence Quantum Labs?
Yeah, so I think defense and gaming are two that and immersive spatial really ties into that as well. So spatial is the foundation of both of those systems. But defense and gaming are wildly similar. People never give them credit for that. And they are all really rooted in really advanced complexity theory. So whether you're modeling warfighting or whether you're modeling a first player shooter game, you are thinking like 4 and 5 steps in advance. You cannot remove the environment from your thinking in those systems. What stuck out to me about Florence was a lot of Abhiram's initial speaking around complexity theory. So Abhiram and I actually met through a really funny LinkedIn post where I use some pretty out there rhetoric in some of my freelance work. And he posted about, I think, looking for a job as a false prophet. And I was like, well, I may be hiring for one of those. And we started talking. He told me what he was working on. And I think Florence, just going back to defense and gaming, something that I often say is that the only people that are better that are at designing game mechanics or warfighting logic are theoretical biologists. So one of my undergraduate degrees is in complexity theory. And the type of thinking that they're doing around systems it's really rooted in complexity theory. So it's not just within mycoponics, but when you're thinking of quantum, you have to think of everything in the context of that. So it's really the complexity of the solution. And then the way Abhiram initially described it, I told Dr. Porterfield, like, I am a hard science girl, but on the math side of it. Biology was not super easy for me. So I'm glad to be on such a great team of scientists. But the way that they articulate the story, passion for space, which has a huge overlay in defense, were all the reasons that I was super excited to come on board with this team and, really excited about taking the solution to market.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's to be incredible to be in an environment like this. So many information, so many new stuff.
Yeah. No, I learn something new every day with this team, which is also, it's I'm really excited part of it. Yeah.
It's never boring. I mean, that's great. And so you're more focused on commercializing the product. So what's the biggest challenge like to bring, taking such an advanced technology and making it market ready? So how to bring all of those ideas to?
So market ready is always something that market ready is just going to depend on your tech assessment, right? Like there are going to be different levels of readiness for different applications. But I think when you're talking about going to market in the way that I think you and I are, which is getting your audience to understand it, getting pharmaceutical companies to understand it. Also, like really within deep tech, it's very common that some of our users are also deep tech people. And so they get it. They don't need a ton of explanation. But within capital raises or getting a broader agricultural community, for example, to understand it, or like even a broader I'd say like the environmental community, like the deep tech is very different from those things. And it's all about meeting people where they are. So my entire background has been in taking really, really complicated technologies and telling the technical story around it. So at the end of the day, nobody cares about your technology. Like scientists care about their technology. As an engineer, I cared a lot about my algorithms, but nobody else really cared about them. And that's just the way of anything. So it's about looking at your user. So whether it's a farmer, a marine farmer, whether it's somebody in defense, and thinking, okay, what is Victor's job to be done today? How does Victor get promoted? How does Victor make an impact? And how do I tell the story of our technology in those terms? What is his goal? And I think as long as you can simplify technology into like, this is what it does for you. So in this case, we can make your soil better. We can make your crops stronger. We can make it more efficient to farm. Within like bioremediation, we can clean your oceans. We can save the soil for longer term use. I think in Brazil, obviously, environmentalism is major for your community and the country as a whole. So how do we support sustainable farming practices? How do we make you just as profitable as somebody who's perhaps not doing the greatest things in the world for the environment, and give you that level playing field. So I think it's just about learning to speak that language of the user.
Oh, that's incredible. It feels like it's simple now.
Good. That's the goal.
Yes. So let's think about the next 2 years. Where do you see the first real world applications of this technology, especially in agriculture?
So I think where we're going to see, and Abhiram, please, jump in here. I think, so obviously Dr. Porterfield is one of our core team members, and he pioneered space agriculture. So while space isn't on top of mind for everybody, space is top of mind for us. And we, I think, are really looking forward to seeing this technology and what it makes possible for life support in space missions. Here on Earth, where we're going to really be starting, you're going to see our tech showing up within agriculture, right where soil, meets the seed. So precision agriculture, that's not just a buzzword and not just something that, your farmers spend a lot of money on and don't really get the results. But it's a platform to give them real-time feedback into the soil. So they know exactly which microbial relationships to encourage. It's like an agricultural intelligence level, I would say. So it's going to be in the fields, giving that adaptive, like living ecosystem to as many farmers as really wanted. And I think it's interesting for me. My family actually owns a farm, not a giant commercial one, but we do own a farm. And so I certainly understand how important that knowledge of the soil is. And with continuous environmental changes, that soil is, behaving differently. So that's where you'll see us within agriculture. And then, of course, drug discovery is a major focus for us as well. So, Abhiram, again, if you want to pop in here at any second with any of these, but I think that'll be our focus for the next 2 years. That's where we've kind of aligned at the moment.
Awesome. I want to see that happening. And okay, so Jordan, many of our listeners in the podcast, they are business development. They come from sales, marketing, C-levels. What lessons from your experience could help them communicate complex technologies to customers or investors in a more relatable way?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say, so actually before I got into defense and gaming, I worked at a big advertising agency for a few minutes while I was at Stanford. And I had the opportunity to be a part of a pitch for Intel. And I had no business being given as much access as was given to that pitch, but a wonderful woman, Nicole Strada, let me be a major part of it. And what that taught me, I think, fundamentally was getting to the root cause of that why again, right? So Intel, semiconductors, who cares? Not consumers for sure. And this was a consumer advertising campaign. So we had to think about, and I learned to think about, why would Intel matter to you and me? I know why it matters to business, but why would it matter to you and me as people? And it came down to a campaign that became Intel Experience Amazing, but it was Intel saves, X number of lives a year because those chips are in hospital equipment. They're in your car. They're what keeps you safe they're what prevents car collisions. They're what, XYZ. So when you're thinking about what you do or how to sell it to somebody, really think about, what do you actually do? Don't just tell me the science of like, if it's an algorithm, okay, well, this is, advanced triangulation, a liquid neural net. Nobody cares. Some people care. Those are probably not the people you're talking to sell. So think really about like, what does it actually do for people, and get as simple as possible. And then, if you're not really a science person, I've scaled sales teams from 0 to 100, 0 to 100 million in revenue, 0 to 100 people. I've been a part of really lean sales teams that are just top to top. And one piece of advice I always get is, if you don't really know the technology, you need to A, learn how to listen, and B, get casual fast with the person you're talking to. So no matter what the industry is, no matter how complex it is, develop that relationship first with the human being. Get them, you need to be likable first and foremost, because likable goes a long way in terms of saying, you know what, I actually don't understand how this works either. Let me call our sales engineering team. Let me call our scientists and get some clarity on this. But get as simple, fast as possible. More features do not matter. Don't waste a lot of time showing them that you understand the technology. Show them that you understand why the technology matters to them and how it's going to help them.
Oh, awesome. That's really good advice here, especially for salespersons. Okay, Abhiram, beyond the science, you often speak about the philosophy behind life, communication, meaning symbiosis. How do those ideas influence your work in biotechnology?
Okay, so I would put it this way. Life is just a dynamic set of meanings persisting over a range of time. So it is just a sort of bunch of information that has been trapped with certain barriers to be held long enough so that it can make a copy of itself, improve its own function, and is very serious about persisting. And in our case, coffee as well. Uh, so now that we have established that within this universe, we are just a tiny set of well-defined biological functions that have become cognitive through ample complexity, we can draw a line from information turning into meaning and meaning turning into communication and the whole reason why we communicate. We don't know. Why do cells share information with each other at such a massive scale that complex life systems emerge out of it? I think this is where I find my intellectual home, at the intersection of semiotics, information theory, evolutionary biology, and quantum mechanics. So these seemingly very paradoxical fields in their own rights come together and glue perfectly when you ask the right questions. And I think this is the next frontier in biotech for us to figure out.
Awesome. Awesome. And the first conversation that we had, you have described the rhizosphere, which, being honest, I have never heard that before. So the life zone around roots as a symphony. So do you believe that understanding that communication between plants, fungi, and microbes can be the next big leap for sustainable agriculture?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So assume, okay, let's use our imagination here. So if you could be an observer with the ability to fast forward or speed up the movie, and the movie is, let's say, the secret life of plants, microbes, and the soil that they started to inhabit, you will find an absolutely phenomenal improvisation of this jazz-like dynamics on how everything came together to grow just one singular sapling in the soil. This is precision agriculture. How precise, you may ask? Well, we say quantum precise. So this information sharing in the rhizosphere will be unbelievably complex and close to impossible to unravel. But since when has that stopped us from doing it anyway? So with the state of quantum tech available today, we are set to study this remarkable mystery of life, to boldly go where no one has gone before.
That's awesome. So that's what I call the precision agriculture at all. So it's a quantum level. So
yes, absolutely. You cannot get any more precise than being quantum precise.
So Jordan, you have mentioned in our last conversation that Florence's work connects consciousness and even human purpose. So do you think that technology like yours can help us understanding why life exists and not just how it works?
So I think that, going back to how I got connected with Abhiram, what he was just talking about of the connectivity and the communication that exists within fungi networks and within living systems, it was a really beautiful way of talking about things that connected really deeply, I think, to my interest in complexity theory. So what you're getting at with that question of why, like that's the eternal question, right? I think that when anybody at Florence, I think, and anybody that's doing, this type of work in general, and by this type of work, I mean people that are looking at living systems, definitely people that are looking at space. I think, that desire to look up and see what else is out there, to ask what else there is really compelling to all of us. And I think Abhiram said something to me once that, like, at some point in time, a cell had to make a decision to use some of its energy to reach out to see what else was there. And it could have used that energy for something else, and it didn't. So I think that with what we can help people understand is what our technology can is understand why, but also help us start to understand, like, why is that question even important to us? And when it comes to purpose and meaning, what is obvious when you're studying complexity theory is that life is not necessarily random. It organizes itself in order to maintain and expand like a space of possibilities. This is something that theorist Stuart Kaufman calls the adjacent possible. So we're continuously exploring new configurations that allow us to persist under changing conditions. And so that drive towards sustained complexity is more visible in fungi than it is in almost anything else in the world. So I think it can help us understand underlying rules, and to a certain extent, like we've seen this in other systems, right? So There's a very famous experiment called the Technosphere by Jane Profit. And it basically was a computational simulation of what we thought life might have been like. And nothing behaved the way we thought it would. So, for example, all the meat-eating animals, we thought they would kill one animal at a time. They didn't. They pushed them all off a cliff all at once in the simulation. It did like a mass kill. And so we're able, because we can isolate fungi into these different stressors, we can facilitate these environments that we could have taken us thousands and thousands of years to ever see again. So we can see what is actually happening. And in some ways, because we can contain it, we'll never fully understand the decisioning, but we will be able to reproduce it. And I think there's meaning in being able to see something so unrelated to you, a mushroom, behave and have kind of the same logic, if you will, that we do when we're making a decision. You and I may have the exact same problem on our hands, but how we react in real time is going to be dependent on that's one of the things I love about gaming. That's one of the things I love about this. Now that I'm doing this, it's you don't know until the real time how people are going to act. And I think we'll be asking that why for forever, but we can understand what are you doing right now and why about that? The broader why, I don't know. We're now have to talk to something out there about that one.
So no matter how you try to predict something, there's always a unknown component in that. So.
Right. And so, because complexity says that there's complexity theory and there's chaos theory. And complexity says that actually the more there are these interactions, to just explain it as simply as possible, the more we interact with each other, actually, the more streamlined our organization becomes. But it's impossible for the most part to say what number of factors are going to lead to X behavior. If anybody figures that out, I think Andrew is working really hard to figure that out on the human side of things. And at Florence, we're working very hard to figure it out on the life side of things that way. What is this mushroom, or what is this mushroom or fungi? I know that there's a lot of feelings about which term to use, but how are they going to behave under which stressors, and how's that going to impact the soil? And those are all things that we'll be able to record these biological conversations and use that knowledge to have impact across industries. But yeah,
that's great. So it's possible to generate scenarios for testing how it's going to be reacted for, no matter what you're pushing into that, so you can predict.
Yeah. So Abhiram, I feel should answer this one. But yes, that's exactly what we're able to do with the mycoponic towers, is simulate different stressors and different environments. And that enables us to do a number of things, but one of the most interesting things it enables us to do is very quickly determine gene activation of different fungi there. And so, Abhiram, if you want to just double click into that, because I think that's a very, very, very important part of why the life in the loop is so critical and how it's so different than what we're doing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So like I mentioned, fungi has been here for 500 million years, and it has survived every single event, even extinction level event, all kinds of invasions, all kinds of threats to its life. So all that information of survival is encoded in what is called as these biosynthetic gene clusters. And they only activate when you put the fungi in one particular situation. And unless you do that, it does not just activate on its own. So the biggest part is that when fungi loves growing in dirt, we have taken it out of the dirt and we are growing it in self-sterilizing towers. So that allows us to grow the fungi for far longer than it usually does in a lab situation. Usually it dies within 2 to 3 weeks. We have been able to continuously cultivate it for more than 7 months, and that allows us to experiment far, far, far many things with the same strain of fungi. And that gives us this advantage as to what particular condition will trigger the activation of these gene clusters that will eventually produce these sort of compounds, which can act as anti-pesticide, which can act as biostimulants. They could even provide you with pharmaceutical drugs. Anything is fair game after that.
That's great. So just my personal question that came to my mind here. So Let's say that, like in the Interstellar movie, we start suffering with dust storms, something like that you can see in the movie. So can we start like trying to replicate the corn conditions under that, so we can figure out a way for not losing the harvest or those crops? So is it possible to predict or to replicate a conditions and adverse one, like to get the results and prepare ourselves for not just suffering like we can see in the movie?
Yes, absolutely. So let me connect it to a different movie. So if you would have seen Martian, the botanist on the planet grows potatoes on the soil of Mars, where nothing has ever grown earlier, right? So the solution is that, given that fungi, once again bringing that point again, like, it has survived all kinds of life conditions, it is the best optimized life form out there that is prepared for extraterrestrial exploration. So if fungi can grow on lunar surface or Martian surface, it can definitely transform the entire landscape of our planet as well. We need to protect these, and we need to study these in great detail, because so far we have only gone to a level where we are applying nanotech to the agriculture, but we haven't gone quantum precise. And that's where we are trying to study these sort of, how shall I put it, a language of the rhizosphere in which it communicates. And the quicker we understand it, the faster we will be able to protect our soil, which has, once again, millions of years of history, the microbes that inhabit it, which have survived it for millions of years as well, and the crops, which are very recent, but we need to understand how they're going to behave, how they're going to talk to each other, so that when I say talk, it's not exactly going to be a language. It's going to be, let's say, sharing of the information. But yes, you can think of it as sort of how rhizosphere talks to itself.
Can I just jump in there, Victor, for a second? Because I think, Abhiram, that was a great, answer, and certainly we can do things for space. But to talk to your audience, who I know a lot of them are in farming or in agriculture, and Interstellar is my favorite movie of all time. The answer, though, to your question is yes. We can theoretically look at, we're not going to be building let's see. So because we have this continuous data about the fungi and the microbes and how they negotiate scarcity, toxins, climate stress, and resource imbalance within the soil, these negotiations are what keep ecosystems alive. We failed those ecosystems in a lot of cases. That is no secret that we are already, at least in the United States, really experiencing major issues with fertility of the soil. But if we can understand how these fungal networks work and create and maintain that soil, yes, you can theoretically rebuild fertility almost anywhere. So we're enabling you to model that behavior at microfluidic scale, so we can help people predict interventions that will work long before the field collapses, I think. And then, I think when we get into bioremediation, that's really the reality of where we're going to be at when we're keeping things here on Earth. Our ability to grow anything in space, and also to produce what's needed for like pharmaceutical in space, like a space pharmacy, that is one great thing. But very similar to the move, I mean, if you've seen Interstellar, you know that only a few people go to space to start that new world, and everyone else is just down here with nothing to eat but corn, and that crop is dying too in that film. So what we are able to do, and when we're working in the environmental sector and the climate sector, we are looking at how to fix what we've broken now, and then how to prevent it from happening in the future. And so that's certainly things that we can prevent. Don't hold us to that yet, though, because we need some more farmers to work with us to get some more knowledge of what we're looking to, what we need to prevent, like what is going on in each area where you're seeing these changes in crops from either over farming, overuse, or climate change.
Oh, and by the way, China has been working on this technology where they're trying to rewild, if that's the right term, the entire Gobi Desert. And they have achieved some amount of success in doing that.
Okay, so Florence Quantum Labs works at the intersection of science and business, two worlds that don't always speak the same language. How do you build leadership within your team to balance creativity and commercial focus?
Yeah, so I think within any team where you have deeply technical people, and right, we are not just a team of deeply technical people, and a lot of teams within quantum are, right? There's a difference between even engineers and people with multiple PhDs, right? So that is a interesting mix of personalities on that, let's call it the operating side, to bring together and to have leadership. And then on the commercial side, I think it is important to, what it comes down to for me, and I've worked across teams like this before, where, there's a lot of egos. Salespeople think they're the most important because they bring in the money. Scientists think they're most important because they've been in school for 150 years. Engineers think they're the most important because they can do the work. And what it comes down to build these teams is that you have to respect everybody's zone of genius. So taking the time to understand, like, what is everybody really, really best at, and letting them operate in that zone of genius. So if they're a phenomenal researcher who also loves to tell the story, which is that's our Dr. Porterfield. He's an incredibly fascinating person who just also happens to have a PhD. I am definitely the people person, so letting me do my thing there. And I think in these cases, and anybody who's sold something that doesn't have a hardware component, it's actually a lot easier when you're dealing with something like Florence's solution that is very rooted in real world applications, versus with software. I actually see a lot more difficulty in getting symbiosis between sales and engineering teams sometimes, because sales teams love to promise the world. And so, and engineers often can build it, whether they want to or not. Within hardware, you're constrained by reality. There's only so much we can do with living matter. So I think it's a little bit easier in that case, but it's about mutual respect. It's about setting intention. I'm really big on, when I come into teams, doing two exercises, one called Who Are You Really?, which is all about, we're not going to sit here and talk about our roles and whatever we do. Like, I want to know who you are as a person. Like, if you were in a burning building, what are you taking with you? So understanding people as human beings. And then this exercise, which is an operating manual, and everybody does it when they come into a team. And that's answering questions like, do you like to be texted or do you like a phone call? What hours do you work? So you can establish this basis of mutual respect, which goes a long, long way in people trusting that what the business team is doing is important for the scientific team, and vice versa. There are going to be fights, though. Whenever you have that many smart people in a room, just like prepare for that and get conflict needs to be constructive, and it can be, but don't think it's going to go smoothly all the time would be my first.
No, not at all. And managing people, it's one of the hardest thing in the world. People are not easy. All of us, right?
They're not. Yeah.
That's great. So before we wrap up here, I'd love to ask you something that connects both your business and your mission. So how important is to establish brand authority in the agriculture industry today? And how do you incorporate top leadership into the strategy at Florence?
So I am a big believer in person anything. So I'm tying it to thought leadership, but for me, there's nothing more important than brand authority. And brand authority, yes, it can come down to, I think when we're talking about it in this context, right, it comes down to your share of voice and how many times are your articles referenced when we're searching this certain subject. And that is critical to have a concrete strategy to establish your place within those markets and within those ecosystems. What I like to do when I'm taking a company to market is identify what I call echo chambers. And so I want to not just have thought leadership, but I want to make sure that we're putting out our thought leadership in areas where the audience wants to amplify it and engage with it in any way possible. And that means amplifying, engaging content that we think resonates with us. I think brand authority, though, starts in the real world. And I'd say this is a lesson from defense, because so much of defense cannot be talked about and so much has to be behind closed doors. And so I think farming is very similar to it in that way. People that have been farming or in the agriculture world have been oftentimes in that world for generations. So I think your authority that you build in a space like that, and that we would want to build as we're moving into that space, is by being there. It's by being at the conferences, it's by meeting the people, actually showing up to learn about what the problems that industry is having, and then keeping your word throughout it. I think within brand authority, the minute that a behavior in the real world undercuts a promise that you've made in the digital, whether it's a podcast you're on or a conference you speak at, if your behavior does not reflect that in life, I am still of the big belief that every single cent you've just spent on promoting that content or getting your thing out there, it's gone because somebody actually interacted with you and it wasn't true. So I did say it's two-part. It's real world behavior, but nothing matters more than trust to this day, especially in the world of AI and rapidly changing dynamics geopolitically, environmentally. It may be very old school, but there is nothing as important as doing exactly what you say you're going to do with people.
I totally agree with you. And that's it. You can promise to be something, but if you are not that in real.
Yeah. And if something happens, I think another thing that really builds trust, and I learned this early in my career as well, actually from something going really, really wrong, like really wrong with the client, like team of lawyers wrong with the client. And so we're all sitting there and we're trying to, figure out, what to say. And you can see the panic on all of our faces because we were a young team who had raised a lot of money. And it was just one of those moments where I just thought of my dad in the moment. I was like, tell the truth. Okay, we just have to lay it on the line. Here's exactly what happened. Here's how we're going to fix it. So I think also when brand authority and brand trust are damaged in some way, covering it up or trying to just keep moving like nothing happened, with today's consumer, they're too savvy for that type of behavior and it bothers them significantly. So while you're building that brand trust and keeping your word and keeping the consistency between what you say you're doing and what your company and you as a person are actually doing, if you step outside that path or somebody does, it is far better and actually I think has a huge net impact on the value of your stickiness with your customer if you just tell the truth. Just tell the truth of what happened and this is how we're going to fix it. And, just tell the truth and move on. And that actually, I've seen companies do that really effectively. And they come with stronger brand authority than they started with after they have a major repair moment.
I agree with you at all. It's always easy to fix when the real has been said. So mistakes can happen for everyone. So why not just say the truth? That's great. So guys, to finish here, I usually do kind of a rapid fire with the guests here. So I want to do it with you guys as well. So it's going to be 2 questions. The first thing that comes into your mind, you guys reply it. So I will start with Jordan and then the same question to you, Abhiram. Okay, Jordan. So one book that changed your life, how you think?
Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, yeah.
Great. Abhiram?
Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, Douglas Adams.
Awesome. Okay, last one. Jordan, something that most people don't know about you.
I speak 6 languages.
6 languages?
Yeah, 2 I learned out of pure spite when I was older, but both of my parents are Russian, and I've just always had a passion for it.
I'm trying to learn the 3rd one yet. I'm on the way.
Once you get Romanians, it's the language I would recommend learning to everyone because I don't know what it is about Romanian, but you learn it and it unlocks every other language in your brain, except for Portuguese for me. Portuguese is very, very difficult when I visit your country for me to pick up on.
Abhiram?
I started as an artist. Maybe that could be one thing that most people don't realize. I started as an artist and given I was asking different questions and then they just pushed me towards mathematics and then mathematics pushed me towards physics and then physics pushed me towards biology.
That's great, guys. It's been a such eye-opening conversation. It was very insightful for me. We're talking about the science to the future of agriculture, the life beyond Earth. Abhiram, Jordan, thank you both for sharing your vision with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
That's awesome. So for those who want to learn more or connect with you, what's the best way to follow Florence and your work?
Yeah, you can follow Florence Quantum Labs on LinkedIn. You can reach out to either Abhiram or I, and you can always reach out to us on our website as well. You can find any of our team on LinkedIn and ping us, and we'd be happy to chat with you about anything.
Fantastic. So to our listeners, if you enjoyed today's roundtable, don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with your network. At Wisenetix, we believe that leadership and innovation are about asking bold questions, and today's conversation reminds us just how far curiosity can take us. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired. See you.